We can see blue screen of GGally, not blue screen of death. Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Um, yeah, so today I'm going to talk about GGally. It's I think Dai has introduced this package before in earlier meetups, but if this is your first meetup, GGally was a package that I like first helped create 15 years ago when I was a undergrad student at Iowa State. And it was, I think Sherry told me I had mentioned a story that like it was supposed to be the package, like there would be ggplot2 and there could be ggally, and no one else would need any other data visualization packages. And uh, yeah, I was wrong, and I'm happy that I'm wrong because that would be a nightmare to maintain. But yeah, so it's supposed to be just just an extension package, and it first started out as a project where different group members were trying to produce different visualizations, and so I had part of this multivariate data visualization, and then we also had some other visualizations come in with it, and it was just like if there's like the goal was to be just something of like if there's a place or a function that doesn't really warrant a full package, then ggli would be the place to put it. And so that's kind of what we stuck with for the first few years. Uh, for some more nostalgia, we have the uh, GGoby summer camp or like get together of one of the first years that I started. And I think this is also one of the images that Di did not have when she presented earlier. And so I'll just kind of walk through some faces. Here's me and these lovely sandals, which I wish I could find again. Um, Deborah Swain, Di Cook, Heike Hoffman. We have Charlotte Wickham, some grad student, and Michael Lawrence, and Luke. Yes. And other grad students at the time. No, just kidding. This is actually Hadley Wickham here in the back. Um, yeah, it was a lot of fun with GGoby and getting together. And I don't see Jason Crowley, who was also one of the authors for one of the functions, but it was fun trying to like I was technically at the time a computer engineer, but they're like, you're doing statistics. I'm like, software development. They're like, you're doing statistics. So that was a lot of fun. Okay, back to Keynote. Um, Also, during this time with the GGLI package, there was a paper that came out of it with John Emerson from Yale, right? Yes, Yale. And so that's where he had both his G pairs plot using base graphics, and then Hadley had done ggplot2, and so we're like, this G pairs is pretty cool. ggplot2 is, we think, the new visualization library. So how can we get G pairs into ggplot2? And I was like, GG pairs, I can do it. I want to make a function. And so that was the big motivation for that. But it's really neat to see how powerful the base graphics were, um, given the complexity of like what's being done. Okay, let me. So in the GGally package, a lot of this uh, revolves around the plot matrix, what I refer to as the GG matrix. And actually, this is how it kind of came about. Just like for comparisons, ggplot has facet wrap, facet grid, I believe, as well. And and that just helps you do your rearranging of your different plots. But the difficulty with ggplot, as you're all aware, when you do facet wrap or facet grid, uh, as expected, all of the plots look similar. They just have different data. So they're small multiples. And so you can quickly scan things and quickly see differences. And this is really nice and very, non-surprising. It's also accurate because all of your columns or axes are of the same type and size unless you specify otherwise, like you're opting out. And so things go as expected. The bad part is that it requires that each plot is the exact same way. The only difference is the underlying data being presented or, going into the calculations, but like it's always a density or it's always a scatter plot or always a line plot or whatever combination you do. And that's not useful when you're wanting to make a matrix of completely different plots. And so ggmatrix, just kind of like working our way from the ground up. For ggally, what we'll want to do is we'll have a matrix where we can display any kind of plot, different plots, completely different in a grid, in a rectangular grid. Then kind of going up one generic step, we're going to do GG pairs where we can display every column pair of data in a grid. So ABC versus ABC. Then GG duo will have two different sets of columns of data within a grid. So we'll have like ABC versus DEF. They don't have to be the same set, but just they're going to be done up against each other. And then finally, like one more complicated layer, like I have a function in there called ggnostic, where we display model data versus model diagnostics, where you're going to pass in your model, which will contain the data underneath. Then we can run all the diagnostics underneath the hood, and we can then display your each variable versus each of the diagnostics. And I thought that was like a fun step from completely generic grid to a fully statistical model grid. Implementation wise, I just do want to point out that ggpairs was first created in 2010, but the matrix wasn't exposed until 2015, I believe. And then ggduo and ggnostic were created in 2016 in separate releases. So it wasn't straightforward coding. I didn't have it all planned out from day one. But just showing where the puzzle pieces fit together, even though linearly, time-wise, they are not created in order. All right, so GG matrix. I know I talked about it but didn't show it. For here, what we can do is just make a list of plots. In this case, I just make some text. It says plot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I put them into a grid with 2 rows and 3 columns. This would work if it was just a normal ggplot because each plot is exactly the same. So we could do a facet grid this way. It's just a little difficult later on when we would have to restructure the data to be very tall to get it to happen though, but it would work. To the bread and butter of GG pairs, this is an example using the flea data set where we're looking at the 3 columns from 2 to 4, and then also coloring by species. This is now where we're starting to look at that G pairs shape where we have something along the diagonal. We have an upper triangle and a lower triangle. Because the upper triangle and lower triangle are duplicates of each other, like you could argue that, so tars 1 and tars 2 is down here, and tars 2 and tars 1 is up there. They would be, just the same data transposed. So given that, why not leverage the space and show different information, show a different angle about your data? So in the bottom, I've defaulted to be scatter plots, but in the top right, default the continuous versus continuous to be correlation information. Another interesting one about GG pairs is this aesthetic of color, in that I say color is species. That actually means like the paint, whereas in the density, if you said color was species, it actually should be the edge of that density. And so for things where it's really you mean fill, I know that it's supposed to be fill, I actually will change it internally so that you can just specify it once, and then it is carried through as you'd expect. Trying to reduce that like amount of surprise that happens. So you don't have to say color species and fill a species, but that's not actually what you mean. There is a variant of ggpairs called ggScatMat. This only works if all of your data is continuous, because as I said earlier, what we end up doing is we take the data, in this case flea, and we'll actually row bind it many times and subset it down so that it's like your x variable, y variable, and color variable, and just duplicate it a bunch, and then we facet over the variables being done, and then that way you can this is actually supposed to be like x variable equals tars1, x variable equals tars2, x variable is head, and it works, but if you have one discrete column, you cannot use scatmat. But ggScatMat has a print time that's very, very fast, where I will say ggpairs, it does print very slowly because each cell of the matrix is an individual ggplot object. So when you get to print time, it takes a little bit. So ggduo, the little bit more generic. So we have, in this case, some baseball data, and we're going to say, here's a set of x variables that I want to look at, and here's a set of y variables that I want to look at in all of their combinations. And given if we mix or match continuous or discrete, fill in those default plots. Similarly with the color, if it needs to be fill for the box plots, it gets auto-converted. When we first started doing ggduo or the different styles of it, like we had ggpairs for so long, and it's just like you always want to look at all the variables against all the other ones. Like why wouldn't you? And then there's situations like this where it's like, no, the year is never a response, so it needs to only be an x-axis. There's certain situations where they only need to be like on your x versus y, and it's like, and then you display it, and then like taking a step back, you go, oh wow, like that's so useful. I didn't know. Like, and then this like world starts opening up of like, how well, what can I do? How can I rename this? Is there any other assumptions that I had held on to for the last 5 years? um, and then finally here, ggnostic. This one I thought was like so interesting because instead of had a very different API shape because you weren't passing in a data frame, you weren't doing more plot like things. It was like one higher step saying like, well, look, you have a model in this case, and we can use like I believe the ANOVA function or a few others, and we have our different um, outputs, and so it fits the ggduo like situation perfectly. So let's make some plots that work with this. And so that way you already have your model. There's no need to deconstruct it. Like let the package do that heavy lifting. And then ggnostic comes in and leverages ggduo's display framework with some custom functions. Just a few little outliers, but that's expected. 5%, right? So um, there are some other common plotting functions. And I say common in that like they have one goal and they are done there, where things like ggnostic, you can change the diagnostics being done. You can like they involve many more plotting functions. Or here, like with ggduo, like I'm not telling you what to put it in. We can actually customize the different functions that go in. But instead, these common functions are more like they have a single goal and relatively less customization. So we'll just quickly go through these. So we have GG bivariate, uh, where Joseph, I know I'm going to mispronounce his last name, so I'm not going to. uh, oh, Joseph, awesome. Thank you. So glad that you're here. The stuff that you did for like how to get the numbers placed in the center of a rectangle is so tricky. Like no, like you think it should be very easy, and then you try it, and it's a terrible experience. And you made that so smooth, and so I can't thank you enough for that. Um, if you're there, um, yeah. So, but yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I'll come back to more more about Joseph in a little bit. So GG Core by Francois. And this one's just great because you can just take a pack, like typically, pass in your continuous data to ggcore, and you'll get a just a lower triangle of comparisons, and it has fairly good defaults right out the gate. Um, this one has advanced over the years, just with small little tweaks here and there. I believe there was something where if it was a zero correlation, the square was being dropped. So there was a nice community addition to where the square is being put back even though it had a zero correlation. That was like a fun little edge case just for zero. But nice that the community stepped in there. ggcoef. So given your model, can we look at your model coefficients to see that they, are not the null hypothesis? In this case, all of these are important. Um, so that's a good one. And then GG parkour. I'll get more onto this one. It's such a useful function though. Um, but yeah, you would take your multivariate data, you pass it in, and then you just link all of the like univariate displays. So as we go through here, I can kind of look at the blue ones like this point is that same point, which is that same point, which then comes up and then comes down. And it's neat that you can actually trace through. It kind of breaks when you have more than 100 or 50 or something else. But it's very nice to see that if you have a proper coloring. Um, in this case, there isn't too much coloring categories going on or like perfect category, but you'll see in some situations where all of a sudden, like all the purple lines will arc up and all the green lines will go underneath. And you'll be like, oh, there's something really important. We should, keep after that. And in this case, it looks like a mixed bag. So like the coloring may not be too important. Um, but it's nice to see, like be able to see what's going on. And one of the last ones that I've always enjoyed the updates because they're very satisfying. But it also is a very, morbid topic of survival analysis. So you pass in your survival model to ggserve, and it takes data, and for every recording, you'll get a little plus sign, or you can change the symbol, and it'll, could be split by, like, given the model, we can figure out what you're splitting it by, and display it accordingly. Yeah, but did a lot of recent updates to that. And finally, ggtable. Joseph also did this one. So extending on the idea of text in the center of the rectangle, we could then color it, put the percentages in. And so with just this like little amount of code, we're now looking at the Titanic data frame with coloring and percentages and everything. Like that's just awesome. There's three network functions in there. This is ggnet2, or it's technically two more network functions. ggnet1 was deprecated. So inside the package we have ggnet2 with Moritz and Francois, and again with just very few arguments, tried to get something that is expected for the user right out the gate. And GG Network, which uh, when doing testing is always a little bit brittle because it has so many different external packages. But in this case, the plots are also very pretty because you're like, wait, what's that city? Oh, what's that city? What's that city? Like you want to look at the data, everything with maps. I always have this extra layer of curiosity on top. So that's a lot of functions. There's even more that I didn't even talk about. And so I just like do a little bit of like of this package maintenance. Like hindsight is 2020, and I'm saying this with a very positive light. I hope I just want my normal personality is cup is half empty. I just want to like put that out there. uh, um, but with the plot matrix being as popular as it is, and how kind of different it is from the other ones, I really kind of wanted to move it to its own package. Um, because like you should have like a GG matrix package, and it'd be a lot easier to explain. Because there's like 20 different helper plots. There's the matrix duo and GG pairs, and they're all very related and interchangeable, and they don't have many design decisions that are like they're not like telling you how it's being plotted, they're just telling you how it's being placed. And that is different than like a correlation plot. So like that's a very different personality. And so at the end, like with it being so successful, I kind of wanted to lift it and then just have GGLI re-export just a couple of the things. Again, Joseph, thanks for all the work that you've done over the past couple of years. Just love the new functions, and I want to point out that I couldn't keep up with the pace of improvements that you wanted to do, which is a like terrible situation for me to be in. Wonderfully awesome for you to be doing and submitting all the updates. And so I'm very glad that we actually moved your functions into a separate GG stats package, because you were just adding things at a really great rate. And but like I also want GGLI to support this because like it was so good at like enhancing those plots. So what ggally does today is we actually re-export ggstats methods, and then that way Joseph can make changes and tweaks underneath in the ggstats package, but ggally can also support and show off like how ggbivariate and ggtable are leveraging the other matrix methods. Kind of like odd for me, but the network plots, as much as I'm intrigued by them, they feel very specialized compared to the other statistical models or just the matrix. So like my gut reaction is now that I have a couple of them, like ggnet, ggnet2, GG network map, I feel like I want to just lift that to a side package of like network extension functions, like plot network extension functions. And then also then because we're siloing off everything, if now the matrix is separate, if now there's GG stats, now we have, maybe we move the network out, then the other methods like ggcoef, ggcore, ggserve, it would be nice to move it to a separate package, but I think now we're just back at ggli because they don't have enough supporting other methods or similar methods to make them into a different side package. And then I didn't talk about it today, but there's another function in the package called glyphs, which has a completely different API cadence, where you use glyphs to change your data, and then there's custom geoms that you can add, and no other method has that approach, I believe. Maybe one of the GG stats, um, but the way that glyphs did it was very, very different. So like part of me wants to be like, well, I know we had the package, but I maybe we should have made that a separate one. But it feels but this is like coming through me as the maintainer who I was not there when it was written at the original time. And then lastly, GG parcord. It's a super useful function with a big however comma. It's had the most requests for enhancements and changes, because when you look at the plot, it seems very like simple, like you want to change it, you want to do this, you want to do that, but how the data is rescaled, how it's then you need to be recombined is much more complicated than what it seems right out the gate. And so it's had a lot of requests for changes, um, but the hard part is like the original author has moved on, so I don't know where the skeletons are. I don't know if he meant to do this or it was an oversight, or like see, how do you ask those questions? So for most of the bugs, you just kind of sit there and you go, I think it's better. I'm gonna roll with it. And I hope no one, has an issue. If they do, we'll revert or uh, try to move on. The good part is that we can, I'll talk more about it later. We can do some unit testing with visualizations to make sure that, they don't change too drastically. But one of the hard parts with GG parallel chords or par chords is it depended upon the Skagnostics R package. And if have anyone ever successfully installed Skagnostics? Has anyone attempted to install it? Good, you have not suffered, and that is awesome. Uh, so R has improved drastically in its ability to install packages. I believe, where was it R 2.7 or something way long time ago? Yeah, but having a package with a Java dependency in like the early stages of R was not fun. And so I still haven't been able to get rid of the Skagnostics package. I think someone maybe has ported it to like a different underlying library, but Skagnostics itself was very difficult to install. And so having GGally depend on Skagnostics always made CRAN submissions a very interesting ride. So there's also some other interesting things, challenges. ggplot2 uh, for since the beginning of GG pairs, I kind of had overwritten the GG plus method in ggplot2. So whenever you loaded library GGally, you would get this plus GG is overwritten by GGally. Please fix or something of the sort. And it was finally the issue was finally written down in 2018, even though we'd made it in 2010. And Tune, thank you, Tune, made a proper fix for it in 2025. Tune, so I'll get to that. Yeah, so ggplot2 version 4 just came out, and I'm stealing all the thunder from Tune because he did a massive amount of work, not just in the package, but also within the community. There was, talking with him, there was like, was 18,000 rev deps or something, 15,000 rev deps, something huge, and 6,000 of them were failing. So when you submit a package to CRAN and you're like, oh, I broke 6,000 packages, they don't respond well to that, rightfully so. And I had talked to them when he had gotten it down to 1,500 and then again to 500, and either doing small tweaks within ggplot2 or by actually reaching out to all the developers individually and saying, this would be a fix, please update, this would be a fix. And like that was Herculean effort. Thank you so much. Um, but also, you fixed like this 8-year-old bug, which is such a rare instance. And yeah, so this also, though switching to S7 required a bunch of time that GGLI needed. And I also feel lucky that I was able to do that during work time because there's a lot of changes that I was able to push back to Tune saying like, hey, we need to make this change in either ggplot or S7. And then also, last one is gtable. Gtable is actually the structure that is underneath the hood for ggplot2. So when you actually print or build something in ggplot2, so you have your plot object, you say ggplot build, it returns a gtable, which is actually just like a bunch of layout mechanisms, layout matrix. And so it'll have like how much space for the header, how much space for the sides, how much for the title, how much for your axes on the left and the right, and things of the sort. And if that changes, then GG matrix printing suffers because GG matrix is actually just a Frankenstein plot matrix of a bunch of different plots, and so I have to reach into the G table, pull it out, and then place it, and then I print it again with the updated version. So every time that changed, the change was I could see the reasoning, I could see the motivation, but each time that change is a pain to fix because it's like I have to remember this G table structure and figure everything out. And oh man, but yeah. So there's like 3 or 4 of those instances over the years where you got to deal with it and run with it. Um, and then it's just going to happen. But every ggplot2 major minor release typically will break all of your visual snapshots. So if you have snapshots, which I'll talk about in a second, you have visual images in your unit tests. Uh, when ggplot2 like moved the title from the center to the left, like broke everything. So you have to make sure your snapshots are up to date, and things will be broken, and that's okay. So long-term maintenance things that I approve of, as we do some maintenance stuff with GitHub, and this is actually independent of project, so you can take this anywhere. Um, even working with colleagues, it's really nice to get a thank you when you post an issue or a pull request. Doesn't matter what it is, just nice being acknowledged. Um, as a developer, post issues on GitHub and the repo. I am super guilty of this, in that I don't do that. But I'm just telling you, it's so nice that when you go to a repo where people do that, to have more issues up there saying like, I want this to be implemented. I wish this could be implemented. I'm not doing it now, but eventually. And then also, if you do see an issue that you are like, nice, but I don't think it fits the vision of the package, it's okay to close it. Shiny is guilty of this. I think we have like over 1,000 issues open, and I don't see the closing anytime soon. It's just the personality that package has taken. Um, and then recently, I've picked up using conventional commits. It's a community standard for how to phrase your commit messages. I don't use it necessarily for the commits, but I use it for the issue or PR title. So it'll be like, oh, this is docs related. This is a feature related. This is a bug related. And it works really well because you can scan those titles really quickly, and if like how much stuff you're getting yourself into. And it's very nice. These are supposed to come in a little more piecemeal, but for package maintenance, this is independent of package. If you're going to do data visualization, ggplot, test that unit tests. Given you're doing data visualization, vdiffer has a snapshot test, which I can't tell you how much has saved my life over the years, because you think everything's working, and then you have 250 snapshots, and one of them breaks, and you're like, but I know it's working, but it's not. Snapshot says otherwise. It's why we do unit tests. And it's even more important with visualization because there's 1,000 ways that a visualization can break versus just a single number. Using rlang and CLI internally, helper methods, and get your messages to the user. They're much clearer with CLI. Roxygen 2 and Package get your documentation right next to your function, and then use Package to make your website given that documentation. If you do deprecate functions, or you make something that you think is interesting but you're not sure of, use the lifecycle package to, tell that information. Spelling for spelling, and linter for your code linting. Um, and a lot of these can be set up using the use this package. So if you're not familiar with the use this package, I highly recommend it because there's a lot of things in there. Even for things like when I'm getting ready to release, I say use GitHub release or use GitHub release issue, and it makes an issue for me on GitHub, which is nice because then it tells everyone else in the world that, hey, I'm getting ready for a release. This is the steps where I'm at. And that's very, very handy. But not in our package. I do want to point out Air, recently created for code formatting. It makes it so that you can integrate it into your editors, such that when you hit Command S or save, it will reformat your code on save. If you're familiar with Python's Black, it's a very opinionated, and this is the way things are done. And I love it for it because then there's no arguing about code style. It's Air's code style. So yes. So this is, I know, ramblings for the last little bit about GGally and some success and long terms, about the different functions. But it's 15 years old. It does your multivariate data visualization. And yeah, if you have your code, please put it into a package and post it, even if it only makes it to GitHub. And then pick that theme. and stick to it. And it's okay to stick to your guns and say, no, we need to do a side package for this because it's a different idea. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Barrett. That was super interesting. I really enjoyed it, and I think, yeah, that tour was pretty eye-opening about this package. Um, see, your round of applause. Yeah, so I guess we'll open it up to questions. I'm sure we'll have several, but I was wondering if you could kind of go back to the beginning and describe how you got going exactly with this package, because ggplot2 even wasn't that old. So did you like
Mm-hmm.
how did it all start? Because I feel like I'm
Uh,
maybe missing a few pieces. Like, did you get
yeah.
roped in, or were you a precocious
Um,
undergrad and were like GGally and
I was that undergrad. I got very lucky in that I was at the right place at the right time. And I had an honor seminar my first year in undergrad, and Hadley was the instructor. And every week for a 1 credit course, he just gave a new data set and a new data visualization tool. And every time, every week was just write a 1 page paper about what you did, not what did you find, but like how you did it. Or so it's more just how to use the data visualization tools. And at the end of that semester, he goes, if anyone wants a summer job, let me know. And I'm like, you guys can get paid to do this? This is great. And the rest is history off of that. So it's a weird one where I go, oh yeah, I've been doing R development since 2007. Yeah, so a long time. um, but yeah, it's when we finally got enough of those functions around, we started to make that package. But it was nice that Hadley was within arm's reach to ask him questions about how to implement things for GGLI, because I learned a lot. I did not know, and I was just lucky to be close by.
awesome. Yeah, I guess we can just take questions in order. So I guess Will, if you want to go ahead and yeah.
Hey, that was great. Thanks, Barrett. I was wondering if you could speak to maintaining a package that seems like kind of it's been developed as independent pieces by lots of different people and what that
Mhm.
experience is like and kind of as you lose those people to, career development or whatever, how you go on maintaining those things. You kind of talked a little bit about this, but maybe more broadly about the whole process of maintaining a package like that.
Um, I think you have to be okay with making each function on its own maintenance cycle. Like, I personally have not adjusted any of the ggnet or ggnet2 GG network. Like, unless it's failing a CRAN check, it's staying exactly where it's at. For things like GG Parcord, where I feel like I can kind of walk my way around things, as updates come in or issues come in, where I go, yeah, that's a fair update. Jason's gone. All right, it's mine now, and and then I just take over the function. And I try to just change the thing that need to be done. It's very arguable that if I rewrote it, then it would, be much more friendly to me down the road. Um, but also I may introduce issues. So I tend to stay more on the surgical side for things that I haven't written or that I don't feel comfortable just jumping back in. In the case of Joseph, uh, I tried to keep doing like, all right, this is software engineering principles. Like, I'm not changing your end goals. I'm just changing the structures underneath, and how it's being done so that it's easier for me to manage or to see what's going on. But I'm also very happy that we were able to get his functions inside ggStats because it was very tied to his upcoming semester, and I may not get to it for 4 months. So uh, good that we got it out.
Great. Thanks so much.
Mm.
Corey, I think you're up if your question is ready.
Yeah, I have more, but I'll start with the collection of GG matrix style functions. You
Mhm.
mentioned that you're interested in spinning these off into a standalone package, which makes a lot of sense. One, is the plan or is there consideration of building those directly calling gtable rather than internally calling one of the existing facet shortcuts from ggplot2? And was there a reason originally not to build a new facet ggproto, but rather to sort of call upon to call upon the higher level ggplot2 stuff internally?
Um, so why not write it directly with facet grid or gtable myself? Because they would change things of like how much spacing is being done. And so I don't know that's actually where that's being done. So what I actually do underneath the hood is I actually make a dummy data set with like just ones, and I say facet according to X and Y so I get the grid. Then, given the grid, I then plot all the individual cells and I lift the panel from the cell and I place it where it's supposed to be in the matrix. So, like, I'm not drawing anything myself. I'm just more like copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. And then at the end, I have this Frankenstein of G table, and then that can be printed. Um, why I didn't do GG Proto? Because even today, it's such a hard concept for me. Um, the other one is it felt like it was disagreeing with the philosophy of ggplot, where your plot types are fixed. So it's not like you can say, my plot plus in continuous upper triangle do this geom. Like that's a very foreign concept. We could do like GG scatmat maybe with this, different approach, but the idea was to be super generic and have any style of plot be done next to another style of plot. And that's, I think, against the ggplot philosophy. So doing a different outside approach, I think, works better.
Joseph, do you want to ask?
Well, first of all, I really want to thank you because I guess at some point it is quite a long time now, it was not so easy to have a place to put additional functions. And I guess we were trying to do some of custom package for oneself with a lot of things, and trying to get into a more general package was a way to make things more general. So thanks again for having hosting in GGally, all of that at the time. And I also understand how on the long-term maintenance is becoming a challenge, and that you are thinking probably to move some function to other packages. And I'm thinking, because you were raising some functions that you do not know what to do with, I think it will be time to stop some function because now they are superseded. I'm thinking, ggcoef model has been replaced somehow by ggcoef has been replaced by ggcoef model in ggserve for a long time now. Maybe ggserve, you have ggserve fit, a complete dedicated package about that. So maybe some functions could be presented as superseded now with the possibility of remove them on middle term. But it's always a question of how confident are we about replacing a function by something else, or wanted to keep it for long-term compatibility and
I really like the idea of superseded. From a developer standpoint, it's nice because unless Cran doesn't like it, it's going to stay put, and not change. So as package user, you can depend on it even if it's not going to change. But if there's a valid replacement, then I'm all for saying superseded in GGLI. Go see that package. uh, I will admit I haven't done my due diligence to add those in. Happy to though.
And Cynthia.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for a very interesting talk. My questions are not so directly about sort of the package implementation, but I noticed in talking about GG stats, and just because you're also here, like how how did you go about sort of picking or sort of, I don't know, letting in functions? Like at what point was it sort of these plots are quite different to say like what gets made during Tidy Tuesday, right? So you have on one end with ggplot these like really custom, really cool things, and I sort of am wondering if you have a sense of like what these sort of statistical plots, the sort of tasks that they're trying to achieve, or like how you would describe it. It's just something I've been thinking a lot about, and the best I can sort of say is like plots that statisticians seem to want to use to sort of look at data or models. And I'm wondering if we could sort of say a bit more so that we might design better APIs for them, or we could sort of think more structurally about, you know, what goes in the package and what doesn't.
So I'll the things that Joseph added with ggStats, I think it was a little bit more like he added in a special geom, I believe, for the rectangular parts where you could add text. I know I've ran into like maybe 5 situations, not saying that it's much, but it's more than 1 or 2, where I've had like a histogram and I want the counts above each one. I want numbers above each one. And when you do it with just no color, it's not too terrible. When you add in color, it is not fun because you have to do a bunch of extra groupings and printing that you weren't expecting. And Joseph was able to get it so it was a geom and it was something that it was built in, and he did the proper proto work. With things like GG matrix and those extension ones, one of the big things for me was to not get in people's ways. Like I wanted to try to say, if I didn't give the ability for you to add in your own custom function for the different combination types, like there would be so many issues being submitted. Like, oh, can you change the color to yellow? Oh, can you make the points bigger? It's like, no, I don't want to deal with that. So instead, I'll try to give something that's following defaults done by ggplot so that I'm not introducing like what I think is a better color scheme or something of the sort. But one of the few things that I tried to add was, oh, you for color of species you meant fill for this plot. So I'll change it so that you don't need to be annoyed by making your API design. But the goal was to try to stay out of the way of the user and let them be as custom as they want. Yeah, for one generic side that makes great maintenance, but also is a rarer situation to have. Whereas with Joseph's ggStats, it was like picking an idea and then running with all the parts all the way down through a GG proto.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really it's interesting what you mentioned about text, because I'm thinking like how that relates to sort of these like annotation geoms and packages that do this sort of like like text type manipulation, but there's clearly something special also about adding text to a sort of statistics plot that
Yes.
needed addressing.
Wasn't it like the GG label package had like a spring algorithm added into it, and so that way none of the labels were overwriting each other? Like
I think this GG repel. It does.
repel. That's what
Yeah,
it was.
yeah. GG
GG
repel does that. Yeah.
I love that concept. Like that in itself is a whole package, and you can explain it. It has the quick little, tweet composable description, and then like people want it because if you've ever tried to move those labels, so infuriating. Game of whack-a-mole. So whenever there's something like that, it's just like, oh, put that in a package.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Joyce and then Sherry.
I have a question about history. I think I'm not the only one who finds it kind of mind-boggling that you thought that there would only be one extension package, that GGally could handle everything. So
Yeah.
if you could talk more about like sort of the process of realizing that wasn't going to happen. You know, that and like sort of watching all of these packages just take off and fill all these other needs.
I was really confused when they first started doing that. And then I was like, yeah, there's no way I could maintain that. I'm so happy that they are doing it themselves. Um, yeah, I think realizing how easy like the CRAN process was, at least at the time. It's gotten a little bit more hoops to jump through today, but it's still not too bad. But seeing them succeed, because you also have different packages like when Cowplot and Patchwork came in, they have slightly different goals than what the Matrix does, and different displays. But like Patchwork, if you want to get plots to line up in a certain way, like it's very, very, very easy to use Patchwork to do so. Where I understand, like GG Matrix, it doesn't have this pipe interface that is, popular today as it should be. It's more just one big function. So yeah, I'm glad that they've used their own packages today.
Hi, Barrett.
Sure.
I just wondering because I heard you talk about like the difficulty with installing Java with the agnostic issues. I'm just wondering, do you think like C++ application would be making the life easier for most people that's depending agnostic calculation?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Hands down. Yeah. If it was redone today, I'd hope I think stance we've tried to take is try to do it with CPP11, our package. And because the headers don't mix, or, whatever it is, there's like less linking that needs to occur. So that's always good. Yeah, it would be great, but there was a lot of parts and to this agnostics part. Maybe with the AI coding agents today, we could probably do that, because it's well defined and it's a translation. But yeah, trying to get the Java set up was not fun. It would be much easier with C. Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
I guess there, one more
Mhm.
question. Like when Patchwork did come out, did you notice a change in how people were using GGally? And I just wonder at like the relationship between the packages, because it is like ensembles.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like interesting, like mutual benefit. Like I didn't feel it as like competition, because one of the important parts is Patchwork always showed the axes for every plot, where GG Matrix only shows the axes on the outside edge. And that was a very different concept. If we look at Patchwork, what it's doing would be really nice for just what is it? GTable to do, where it's just, insert layout header, insert layout cell, print, print, print. Like it's not crazy difficult, but the API is very, very, very pretty. But to do the same thing in GG pairs or something of the sort, you would have to create every single plot. You'd have to add them all together. You'd then have to divide and add them all together, and divide and add them all together. And that's just a real big pain. And you'd have axes everywhere. So I think different goals. And so it's nice to see that they show up, and are done accordingly. But different goals. And so it's nice to point people to have them meet their needs.
Awesome. Well, we are at the hour, so like I think we've come to the close of the official portion of the meeting. And if people do need to jump off, they can feel free. Yeah, I think, did you want to do the code review thing?
Sure. I just wanted to
Yeah, or
in the
you want
comments.
to
Oh,
wrap
yeah.
up? There might be if anybody else wants to jump in with one more question.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for the comments in chat.
Yeah.
Oh, you're muted, Michael.
Unmute. Quick question. The thing about the ggpairs approach, the matrix approach, is fundamentally different than everything else that's done in ggplot, because you have a set of columns rather than just, an X and a Y. I was quite interested in the post by Danielle Navarro. She defined a pivot pairwise
Oh, fun.
operator. A deep. Oh, and that totally changes the game. So you take a wide data set, pivot pairwise does exactly the right thing to create a collection of stacked data frames, data sets, with each X and each Y. So, I mean, it's not something that one would go back and redo everything in ggpairs, ggmatrix, but it might be something useful to think about, because it seems like such a clean approach to doing pairwise plots. I go back to when I was working on categorical data, developing mosaic plots. And so, two variables, do a mosaic plot, or put more variables into one, but then a mosaic matrix for all pairwise plots was something really natural. And in the Emerson et al. Paper, I was really intrigued that way of combining continuous and categorical data in the same plots. And the pairwise, pivot pairwise idea would sort of naturally map into that.
Yes, yes. The pivot pairwise, we actually use, it's not that function, but it's that implementation of to get ggScatMat. So you pass in your wide data frame, and then internally we R-bind it so that it can just go through a standard facet grid. And yeah, the difficult part, if it was actually to be used for ggduo or ggpairs, is with pivot pairwise, you can't specify things specifically for a certain style of plot. So in ScatMat, it works because every plot, or not every plot, sorry, it's all continuous data, and so you can kind of get away with certain things.
Okay.
Whereas in GG pairs, it's like we have a univariate in the diagonal. We have continuous, and we also have continuous and discrete, like box plot and scatter plot. And ggplot does not appreciate having those two plots in the same concept. So it'd be very difficult to describe as to how to adjust a certain plot.
Okay.
But I'm all for the function, because you'd also you'd also want to have maybe like a reversal of it. If you had a standard tall, tidy data frame, can I turn it into a wide one so that I can pass it into GG pairs? Or it would be accepted by GG pairs, like, oh, tall data frame is true, and then I would handle it accordingly. But at the time, I was just looking for the quickest way, and, dplier concepts weren't solidified. I think we were all using plier had just been created, so and that's already been deprecated.
Anyway, thanks so much for a lovely talk.
Thank you.